His name popped up in an old news article from 8 years ago about a man involved in a custody battle. The details were fuzzy, but one thing stood out. His ex's name was Catherine. Kathy. Heart racing, I searched mom's name alongside his. Nothing came up, at least, not directly. But then I found a court record from around the same time. It wasn't about them as a couple, it was about me. It was a custody modification case. My mother's name was listed as petitioner. And under respondent, my father's full name. The date was just a few months before my dad supposedly left for good. I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. Why would there be a custody modification if my dad had just abandoned us? And why did Mark's name keep showing up in connection to Kathy, who seemed to be involved somehow? I printed everything I found, stuffed it in my backpack, and headed home, my hands shaking the whole ride. When I got there, the house was empty. I took the chance to go through the one place Mom never let me near, her old filing cabinet in the closet. The bottom drawer was locked, but the key was in the kitchen junk drawer, right where it had always been. Inside, I found a stack of envelopes held together by a rubber band. They were all from the same address, my dad's. Some were unopened, others torn open with the letters still inside. I skimmed through them, my eyes catching on words that felt like punches. Please let me see her. I miss my daughter. This isn't fair. My breath caught in my throat. My mom had told me he never tried to contact me, that he didn't want me. But here was proof, years of proof, that he had been writing, begging to be part of my life. And then, at the very bottom of the drawer, I found a manila envelope labeled in Mom's handwriting, for when she's older. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a court order. My mother had been granted full custody on the grounds that my father was unfit, based on a statement from a witness. The witness's name? Mark. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. He'd been in her life long before she admitted it, long before she told me he was just a friend from work. And somehow, he'd played a role in making sure my dad was completely erased from my life. I sat there on the floor, the papers spread around me like pieces of a shattered mirror, and for the first time, I saw my mother not as my hero, but as a stranger. I didn't even hear the door open until her voice came from behind me. What are you doing? I turned, clutching the papers. What is this, Mom? Why did you tell me Dad didn't want me? Why did you let Mark testify against him? Her face went pale. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. You don't understand. Then make me understand. My voice cracked, tears stinging my eyes. All these years, I thought he abandoned me. I thought it was my fault. And you let me believe that. She reached for me, but I stepped back. He wasn't good for you, she said quietly. He made mistakes. So do you, I shouted. But I would have forgiven him. I never got the chance because you took it away. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing hard, like she was deciding whether to come clean or shut me out completely. Finally, she whispered. I was scared. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? My voice broke. Or protecting yourself? The silence that followed was heavier than any words she could have said. I pushed past her, grabbed my backpack, and walked out. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't be there, not with her, not with him, not with the lies. As the door slammed behind me, one thought kept echoing in my head. If my mom could hide something this big for so long, what else didn't I know? The air outside was cold enough to sting my cheeks, but I barely felt it. My chest was too tight, my thoughts too loud. I walked without direction, my sneakers pounding the wet pavement as if moving faster could outrun the truth I'd just uncovered. I ended up at the park near my old elementary school. The swings were slick with rain, the playground empty. I sat on the damp wooden bench and pulled the stack of letters from my backpack, reading them under the dim glow of a street lamp. Each one was worse than the last. My dad writing about how he was saving up for a lawyer. How he had sent me birthday gifts that were returned unopened. How he didn't even know if I was reading the letters, but he kept sending them anyway, just in case. My mom hadn't just hidden the truth. She'd rewritten my whole childhood. Every time I'd cried myself to sleep thinking I wasn't good enough for him to stay, she'd known the real reason, and she'd said nothing. And Mark. He wasn't some random boyfriend she met at work. He'd been there the whole time, quietly playing a role in making sure my dad stayed out of the picture. That witness statement hadn't come from a place of truth. It had come from loyalty to her. I didn't go home that night. I called Jenna, my voice trembling, and she told me to come over. Her mom didn't ask questions when I showed up with red eyes and a backpack. She just made me tea and set out a blanket on the couch. The next morning, I made a decision. If my mom wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd get it from the only other person who could, my dad. It took some searching online, but eventually I found an address that matched the return labels on the old letters. I wrote him a short note, my hand shaking the whole time. I don't know if you'll even believe this is me. Mom told me you didn't want me. I know now that wasn't true. If you want to talk, please write back. I mailed it that afternoon, not knowing if I'd get an answer or if I was ready for one. When I finally went home a few days later, Mom was waiting in the living room. Her eyes were puffy, her hands twisting in her lap. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "I know you hate me right now. I know you have every right to. But I did what I thought was best at the time." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how ripping a father out of his child's life could ever be best. But I was so tired, tired of yelling, tired of crying, tired of feeling like the ground under me kept shifting. So instead, I just said, "You didn't give me a choice." She nodded, her chin trembling. "I know. Mark wasn't there. Whether that was by her choice or his, I didn't care." The thought of him in my house made my skin crawl. The weeks that followed were awkward, quiet. We spoke when we had to, but there was a wall between us now, one I didn't know how to tear down. She tried to make small talk, to ask about school, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was a stranger pretending to be my mom. Then, one afternoon in late December, an envelope arrived in the mail. My heart almost stopped when I saw the handwriting. It was his, my dad's. I took it to my room, sat on the bed, and opened it with trembling hands. "I've waited for this day for so long," it began. "I never stopped loving you. I never stopped trying. I'm so sorry for what you've been told. If you're willing, I would like to meet. No pressure, just a coffee, a walk, whatever you're comfortable with." By the time I finished reading, my hands were wet with tears. I didn't know what our future would look like. I didn't know if meeting him would heal the hole in my chest or make it bigger. But I knew I had to try. The next weekend, I went to the coffee shop he suggested. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might turn around and run. But then I saw him, standing near the window, holding a paper cup, looking just like the faded photo I'd kept hidden in my desk drawer for years. When our eyes met, he smiled, not the kind of smile you give a stranger, but the kind you save for someone you've missed every single day. I don't remember exactly what we said in those first moments. All I remember is the way it felt, like a door I thought was locked forever had finally creaked open. Later, when I went home, Mom was waiting again. She didn't ask where I'd been. Maybe she already knew. We didn't have a big fight or a tearful reconciliation. We just sat in the same room for the first time in weeks. I don't know if our relationship will ever go back to what it was. Some betrayals leave scars too deep to fade. But I do know this. I'm not the little girl who believed every word her mother told her anymore. I have my own truth now. And I'm not letting anyone take it away from me again. Seeing my dad that day didn't magically fix everything, but it cracked open something in me I hadn't felt in years: hope. We sat in that coffee shop for over an hour, talking like strangers trying to find their way back to each other. He told me about the years after the custody battle, how he'd moved 3 states away for work because every time he tried to fight for me, the court shut him down. He'd written those letters from tiny apartments, hotel rooms, even from his car when he was between jobs. "I didn't want you to think I gave up," he said, his voice low and rough. "I just ran out of ways to prove I was telling the truth." Hearing it hurt, because it confirmed everything I'd feared, but it also healed something. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd been locked out. I told him about growing up with Mom, about the pancakes and bedtime talks, but also about how she'd slowly started pulling away once Mark came into the picture. He listened without interrupting, his eyes locked on mine, like he was memorizing every word. When I mentioned Mark's name, His jaw tightened. I know him, he said. He was around before the custody case ended. I didn't realize how close they were until it was too late. It was a lot to process, but for the first time, I felt like I had pieces of the puzzle my mom had kept hidden. When we left the coffee shop, he hugged me tight, like he wasn't sure I'd let go. We'll take this slow, he promised. I don't want to scare you off, but I want to be here now, in whatever way you'll let me. That night, I went home and sat on my bed staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to text mom and tell her where I'd been. Another part of me wanted to keep this piece of my life for myself, safe from her control. In the end, I did neither. I just sat there, feeling the weight of everything that had changed in the past few weeks. The days after our meeting were strange. Mom was quieter, softer, like she was trying not to set me off. She asked if I wanted to do something together one weekend, just us, but I wasn't ready. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Mark still came around, though less often. Whether that was because mom told him to, or because he sensed I didn't want him there, I couldn't tell. But every time I saw him, I felt the sting of what he'd helped take from me. One night, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. You need to talk to her, Mark said. She can't keep looking at me like that. I have talked to her, Mom snapped back. She's not ready. And frankly, maybe she never will be. That was the first time I realized. Maybe she knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. A week later, another letter came from my dad. This one was longer, stories about his family, his favorite memories from when I was little, even a few old photos tucked inside. One of them stopped me cold. It was me, maybe 3 years old, sitting on his shoulders at a park. He was smiling up at me, and I was laughing with my arms stretched out like I was flying. The date in the corner said it was just a few months before he left. That night, I found myself crying, not because I was sad, but because I finally had proof in my hands that I'd been loved, even back then. That it hadn't all been a lie. I don't know exactly where my relationship with my mom will go from here. Some days, I think we might be able to rebuild something new, different from before, but real. Other days, I feel the anger rise up again, sharp and heavy, and I can barely look at her. But one thing is certain, I'm not in the dark anymore. I have both sides of the story now. And no matter how messy it gets, at least it's mine. And maybe that's enough to start over. It happened faster than I expected. One Friday afternoon, my dad texted me, in town this weekend. Can we meet again? I wanted to say yes immediately, but something in me hesitated. I couldn't keep sneaking around forever. If I was going to rebuild a relationship with him, it had to be out in the open, even if it meant facing my mom. So I texted back, okay, but I think mom needs to be there too. He agreed. And that's how, 2 days later, I found myself sitting in our living room with my dad in one chair, my mom on the couch, and me in between them like the referee in a game I never wanted to play. The tension was thick from the start. My dad's eyes flicked around the room, like he was memorizing every detail, maybe wondering how much of my life had been shaped without him. My mom sat with her arms crossed, her jaw tight. I broke the silence. I know both of you have your own version of what happened, but I'm tired of guessing. I need to hear it, all of it. My dad glanced at her, then back at me. I never wanted to leave you, he began. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands clenching. I made mistakes, yes. I wasn't perfect, but I fought for you. Every step of the way. That's not the whole story. Mom cut in sharply. Then tell me, I snapped, my voice cracking. Because all I've had for years is your story, and now I find out it wasn't the truth. Her eyes softened just a fraction. Your dad. He wasn't always stable back then. He had money problems, moved around a lot, and I was terrified you'd end up caught in the middle. And yes, I asked Mark to testify, because I thought it was the only way to make sure you stayed safe. Dad shook his head. Safe? Or under your control? They went back and forth, accusations, defenses, half-truths spilling into the air until it felt like there wasn't enough oxygen left in the room. Finally, I raised my voice. Stop, I don't care about winning or losing. I care that I lost years with my father. I care that you both made decisions about me without letting me have a say. I care that I've been living with a hole in my life that didn't have to be there. The room went quiet. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I'm sorry, she whispered. Dad exhaled slowly. Me too. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Before I tell you about the day my mom stopped caring about me, I need you to understand how close we used to be. It was always just the two of us. My dad left when I was 3, at least. That's what Mom told me. And from that point on, she became my entire world. And in return, she made me feel like I was hers. I still remember Saturday mornings in our little apartment in Portland. The sun would slip through the blinds, painting golden stripes across my bed, and I'd wake up to the smell of her pancakes. Not just any pancakes, she'd shape them into animals, hearts, even my initials. She'd hum along to the radio, her voice soft and warm, and every now and then, she'd glance over at me with a smile that said, "You're my favorite person in the whole world." She never missed a school event. Even when she was exhausted from working 2 jobs, she'd be in the front row at my choir concerts, her phone ready to record every second. At parent-teacher conferences, she'd beam when they said I was kind or hardworking. And every night, before I fell asleep, she'd kiss my forehead and say, "I'm proud of you, kiddo." We didn't have much. Sometimes rent was late, and we had to stretch grocery money until payday, but we had each other. And for a long time, I believe that was all we needed. But looking back, I can see the signs of change long before I realized what was happening. It started one Thursday in late September. I was a junior in high school, buried in homework, when Mom came home later than usual. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, black, with a neckline that dipped lower than she usually wore. Her makeup was heavier, her hair curled in perfect waves. I teased her, asking if she was trying out for a movie role. She laughed, but there was a spark in her eyes I couldn't place. "Just went out for drinks after work with some people," she said, brushing it off. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But over the next few weeks, those drinks after work became more frequent. She'd come home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't hers, her phone lighting up with messages she didn't answer in front of me. One night, I caught a glimpse of her screen. It was a text from someone named Mark. I asked who he was. She hesitated for a second too long before saying, "Just a friend from work." But Mom wasn't the type to bring friends from work into her personal life. And soon, she wasn't just coming home late, she was leaving early. Some nights she didn't come home until after midnight, and when she did, her smile wasn't the same smile she gave me. It was distant, distracted, almost guilty. The change was subtle at first. She started forgetting to ask about my day. Dinner became leftovers I heat up alone. If I tried to tell her about a school project or a problem with a friend, she'd nod absent-mindedly, her fingers tapping away on her phone. I told myself it was temporary, that she was just busy, stressed, maybe even happy in a new relationship. But deep down, I felt something slipping, like a rope we'd both been holding on to for years was fraying in the middle. And then came the night I realized she wasn't just distracted, she was different. It was a Friday, and I had a big history presentation the next day. I'd been practicing for hours, nervous but excited to show her. I waited on the couch, script in hand, for her to walk through the door. She didn't come home until nearly midnight. When she did, she was laughing, loud, carefree, like she hadn't in years. Mark was with her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that seemed friendly enough, but his eyes scanned me quickly before focusing back on her. "Hey, kiddo," Mom said, like it was no big deal that she'd missed our practice. "This is Mark." We grabbed a late dinner. I forced a smile, said hello, and then went to my room. But I heard them laughing in the kitchen, her voice softer now, like the way she used to speak to me. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and realized something I didn't want to admit. Mom's world had shifted, and I was no longer at the center of it. The weeks after that night felt like watching a movie of my life on fast forward, except I wasn't the main character anymore. I was background noise in my own home. Mom and Mark started spending almost every evening together. If they weren't going out, he was over at our place, bringing takeout and cracking jokes that made her laugh like she was a teenager again. At first, I tried to be polite. I even sat with them a few times during dinner, listening to stories about their crazy coworkers or that one trip to Vegas. But it was clear I didn't fit into their conversations. I was an outsider in my own kitchen. When I tried to talk about school, Mark would nod vaguely, like he was just waiting for me to stop so he could get back to his story. Mom didn't seem to notice, or maybe she didn't care. She laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when he talked, and when she looked at me, it was as if I'd interrupted something. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that she was just in the honeymoon phase of a new relationship. But the small things kept adding up. She started missing school events. The first time, it was my choir recital. She texted me 20 minutes before I went on stage. "Sorry, sweetie. Something came up at work. Break a leg." I knew she wasn't at work. I'd seen her Instagram story of her and Mark at a new Italian place downtown. Then she missed the parent meeting for my senior trip. And when I reminded her about the date for my big science fair project, she just said, "We'll see if I can make it." We'll see. She'd never said that before. At home, her habits shifted too. Dinner together used to be sacred, even if it was just microwave mac and cheese. Now, more often than not, I ate alone at the counter while she got ready to go out. My bedtime, "I'm proud of you," was replaced with a quick "night, honey," yelled from the hallway as she rushed to change into heels. One night, after another silent dinner by myself, I went into her room to ask if we could have a day together that weekend, just the two of us, like old times. She was on the phone with Mark, laughing softly. When I asked, she covered the receiver with her hand and said, "We'll talk about it later, okay?" But we never did. I started spending more time in my room, headphones on, trying to drown out the sound of their laughter drifting down the hallway. The warmth in our home was fading, replaced by a constant undercurrent of something I didn't want to name yet. The worst part was how Mark began acting like he had some kind of authority over me. At first, it was little comments, telling me to smile more or help your mom out more. She works hard. But then he started weighing in on my choices. One Saturday, I was watching TV in the living room when he walked in, saw the screen, and said, "Shouldn't you be doing homework instead of wasting your brain cells on this junk?" I stared at him, shocked, and waited for Mom to defend me. But she didn't. She just shrugged and said, "He's not wrong." That stung more than anything. My mom, who used to be my safe place, my number one supporter, was suddenly siding with a man she'd known for a few months over me, her own daughter. It wasn't just that she was distracted. It felt like she was rewriting the rules. Things we'd always done together, movie nights, pancake breakfasts, late night talks, were being replaced by their plans. I didn't just lose my mom. I lost our little world. I didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. The real shift, the one that would make it impossible to ignore, was coming. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I came home from school drenched, my hoodie clinging to my skin. Mom was in the kitchen with Mark, cooking pasta. I told her about my day, about how I'd been chosen to lead our class presentation for the regional history competition. She didn't even look up from the pot. "That's great, honey," she said flatly. Mark chuckled. "Future president right here." It sounded like a joke, but I couldn't tell if he meant it. I waited for her to ask more, to be excited like she used to. But she just went back to stirring the sauce. That night, lying in bed, I realized something I had been trying to avoid for weeks. I wasn't the most important person in her life anymore. Maybe I wasn't even in second place. And yet, I still had no idea why it was happening. The reason, when I finally learned it, would make me wish I'd never asked. By the time November rolled around, it wasn't just me feeling the change, it was everyone around me. My best friend, Jenna, noticed first. One afternoon in the library, she leaned across the table and whispered, "You've been different lately. You okay?" I wanted to tell her everything. How my mom seemed like a stranger. How Mark was everywhere, all the time, like he'd moved into our lives without permission. But saying it out loud felt dangerous, like it would make it too real. So I just shrugged. "I'm fine. Just busy." But I wasn't fine. The distance between Mom and me had grown into an entire ocean, and I didn't know how to swim across it anymore. The breaking point came on a Sunday, one of the only days she didn't work. I woke up early, determined to bring back a piece of the past. I made pancakes, the way she used to for me, stacking them high and topping them with strawberries. I even put on the old playlist we used to dance to in the kitchen. When she came downstairs, I smiled and said, "Surprise. Thought we could have breakfast together." Her eyes flickered to the clock. "Oh, honey, I can't. Mark's picking me up in 10 minutes. We're going to check out a car show." I felt my chest tighten. "Can't you just stay for a little while? I haven't seen you much lately." She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "We'll have plenty of time later this week." "Will we?" I blurted out. "Because every time I try to talk to you, you're with him. You don't come to my events anymore. You don't even ask about my day." "Don't start," she snapped, her voice sharp in a way I'd never heard before. "Mark is important to me." "You're acting like a child." I stared at her, stunned. "I'm acting like a child because I want to spend time with my own mom?" Her jaw tightened. "You'll understand when you're older." That phrase, "when you're older," burned in my chest. It felt like a dismissal, like she was telling me my feelings didn't matter because I wasn't old enough to have them. Before I could respond, a car horn honked outside. She grabbed her coat and, without another word, left me standing there in the kitchen with a plate of pancakes going cold. I didn't cry right away. I just sat down and ate them by myself, each bite heavier than the last. It wasn't until I heard her laughter drifting in from the driveway that the tears came. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew thicker. I started avoiding them both. I stayed late at school, hung out at the library, even wandered the aisles of the grocery store just to avoid going home. But Mark noticed. One night, when Mom was in the shower, he knocked on my bedroom door and stepped inside without waiting for me to answer. "You know," he said casually, leaning against the frame, "your mom worries about you." I didn't believe that for a second. She has a funny way of showing it. His smile tightened. "She's happy for the first time in years. Maybe you should try being happy for her." I bit back the urge to tell him that she'd been happy before he came along, at least with me. Instead, I said, "Maybe I just miss my mom." He didn't respond. Just gave me a look I couldn't read and walked out. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed to know why she had changed so suddenly. There had to be a reason, something bigger than just a new boyfriend. And if she wasn't going to tell me, I was going to find out myself. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One Saturday afternoon, she left her phone on the counter while she went to take a shower. Normally, I'd never snoop, but that day, something in me snapped. My hands were shaking as I picked it up and scrolled through her messages. Most were from Mark, flirty, mundane, nothing too revealing. But then I saw a thread with a name I didn't recognize. Kathy. The most recent message from Kathy read, "Does she know yet?" My stomach dropped. I scrolled up. Bits and pieces of the conversation came together like shattered glass. References to the truth. "Not yet. She'll find out eventually." And one message from Mom that made my blood run cold. "I just hope she never looks into it. She'll hate me if she does." The phone slipped from my hands onto the counter. My pulse was pounding. What could she possibly be hiding that would make me hate her? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever it was, it had something to do with Mark. And I was going to find out. The next few days felt like living in a suspense movie where I was both the detective and the suspect. I couldn't stop thinking about that message. Does she know yet? Every look from Mom felt different now. Every laugh she shared with Mark made me wonder if it was at my expense. I started paying attention to the little things. The way she flinched when I asked about her past. The way Mark always changed the subject when Dad was mentioned. By Thursday, I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. I decided I was going to dig deeper. That afternoon, I pretended to have a group project after school, but instead of meeting friends, I took the bus to the library downtown. I logged into one of the public computers, opened a search engine, and typed in Mark's full name. The results made my skin crawl.